Good morning and welcome to the Tuesday morning show where ASI's most outspoken editors talk promo products. I'm Andy Cohen, editor of Counselor Magazine, and I am here in the studio with the one and only Joe Haley. How are you, Joe?
I'm terrific, Andy. How are you?
Good. You were just regaling us with stories about seeing the Pope this weekend in Philadelphia.
I did.
How was that?
It was fantastic. It was moving and emotional and spiritual and joyous and happy. All those people, not any issues with anyone. There's no pushing, no one arguing,
Wow.
no one yelling. It was great. It really was great. And, I got as close as 20 feet from him when he come by in the motorcade on Sunday, so I was very happy. So
Very cool.
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds like fun. He
It was
in
awesome.
New York too just before that, and
He was.
it was quite the scene around the New York and Philadelphia areas over those 4 days.
Yes, it was.
So very cool. I'm glad
Yeah.
you got to see that. All right. Well, we are going to welcome into the show now Ron Marks. Ron is the partner with Southwestern Consulting, and he's the author of the best-selling book Managing for Sales Results. Ron will also be at our ASI shows next year, speaking in Orlando, Dallas, and Chicago. And today we're going to talk to Ron about some selling strategies. Ron, how are you today?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me on board.
No problem. I'm glad you could join us. Let's just jump right into it. So, first, let's start off with what you think salespeople need to do today to be successful. What approaches for salespeople do you think works best?
It's an interesting question. I've been fortunate to be around the sales training business for about 35 years now, and sales is one of those careers that nobody grows up thinking they want to be a salesman someday. It's like you don't go to high school or college thinking, I want to be a salesman someday. It's usually you want to be an astronaut or a pro football player. And so it's kind of an accidental profession. And most people, when they think about salespeople, they think there's a predetermined genetic disposition. Like, in other words, you have to be outgoing and gregarious and so forth. And I think the idea that the relationship-based thing is a really important thing. But today, you asked about today what's working best. We're finding that having industry expertise, like really knowing your stuff, and being willing and able to challenge your client's conventional thinking, with the advent of the internet and obviously the information that's available to people more and more. Most people don't like salespeople, so they don't invite them to the process very early. And unfortunately, many people get information. They also get misinformation online. And so they think they know what they're looking for. So the best salespeople today are willing to challenge people. And it used to be salesman was the purveyor of all things new and all things informational. And today, they're coming in later and later. So the ability to challenge and to be able to question the prospects or the customers' way of thinking to make sure we do something that's best for them. I think that's probably the best thing that's working today.
Now, to challenge customers, what do you have to do to really do that? I would imagine you need a lot of information, knowing a lot about their business as well as the market that they operate in.
Well, yeah, you've got to become an industry expert and a specialist. So that I think the days of being, jack of all trades, master of none are over. You really need to know what's working in your industry and what's helping businesses move forward. You've got to know what your competition's doing, and you really need to think ahead of where things might be going, so that you become, it's been coined years and years for salespeople, a consultative approach, right? You become a consultant, and a consultant's willing to challenge somebody. A consultant is willing to say, hey, wait a minute, let's rethink this a little bit. What are you really trying to accomplish? And help people make a better decision. So industry knowledge, competence is paramount.
Ron, let's talk about landing big deals. There's a lot of salespeople out there who want that big client. They want that big order. What steps should a salesperson expect to have to take in order to sign big clients?
It's especially in the advertising specialties industry, it's something that really, you want to move away from being the commodity. You want to move away from the person that's simply providing the product that anybody else can provide. And it takes a lot of what we talked about in the first question is it takes becoming an expert in the industry so that you can move off of this idea of a commodity. You've got to create a value add so that your client is contacting you not just because they need to order something, or they've got a convention coming up, they need promotional stuff, or they need something to send thank you gifts. But really what you want to become is you want to become someone who they call for advice on anything involving marketing or advertising. So, it becomes a relationship. So you move from the commodity level to, obviously you've got a product that's got certain benefits, but you really need to kind of go the extra mile and go up the organization where you build a relationship. The other thing I find is it's important that, and this is a tricky one, is to try to get a relationship higher and higher in the organization. So when you talk about big deals, we're talking about multiple decision makers, multiple departments, and the closer you can get to that C-level suite, the better you're going to be. The tricky part is trying to get there without offending the person that you're working with. Most folks listening in on this show are probably talking to purchasing departments and so forth. And in order to get bigger deals, you got to move up, and you got to be talking to the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer. You need to be talking to the VP of Sales, and building a relationship over time with them.
How do you, Ron? Let me follow up on something that you just asked. You just talked about as far as getting away from being a commodity. How, in practicality, do you really do that? If you have a client, say, that is, maybe more focused on the transactional, and they're used to ordering, 1,000 pens or 1,000 calendars from you every year, and they pretty much just reorder that. How do you turn that into less of that kind of commodity transaction and more of a, like what we're talking about here, consultative relationship?
Well, I think you have to help the client understand and develop what it is they're trying to accomplish in the market. So for example, in an advertising, especially for example, what you'd want top of mind, you'd want stickiness, you want something that people would use. So the better consultants have the ability to not just start quoting, the client calls up and asks for pens. Instead of just starting to quote pens, maybe suggesting they get a nicer pen, which is kind of a product with benefits, right? But if you can start to get them to think about what is it that people are using today. And for example, adding the stylus to the end of the pen that they can use on their iPhone or their iPad. Those kinds of things start to add value in getting people to think about that. But maybe even going a step further and talking about how can they put something in the hands of a customer that's going to stay there and get used over and over again. One of the most brilliant things I've ever found is it's a power extension. So it's a little bit of a power strip, but it's a baby power strip. And those that travel, you can never seem to find enough plugs to charge your devices between flights. So if you have this little thing and you can just jump in and plug it in, and everybody else around you can jump in, and you can still charge your item. That's something people will use. That's something they'll keep. So if a customer calling me talking about pens, I might say, well, let's talk about who's going to be using what you want to distribute. Are they traveling people? Okay, so if they're traveling people, what about? And then you start moving along those lines of suggestion to get something that's going to stay in someone's hand in their briefcase, and they're going to pull out every single day. So I think that's how you move away from just quoting commodity items. You're adding something, and you're suggesting something that is going to help build their business.
Very good. Well, let's move to a topic that is a common issue for salespeople, and that's overcoming objections, client challenges and objections. How is this best done today?
It goes, whether it's today or 50 years ago, I think handling objections are first off, you got to accept the idea that when a client gives you an objection, that's a good thing. It means there's interest. That means that they feel like that this is something they want to talk about further. The things you really find slow down the selling process are the stalls, and the stalls are those I want to think it over, or I want to get other quotes, those kinds of vague things that permeate our business. If we can help break down, and those of you that will join us at the conference coming up, the series of events, we're going to talk very specifically about this. But really, what you want to be able to do is to be able to break down the stall, acknowledge that they're interested, break it down by, process of elimination, using things that they want. So it's not this, it's not that, not this, so it's probably this, isn't it? Which most of the time comes down to money. And once you get money on the table, now you've got something you can work with and something you can resolve. Objections are really those obstacles that get in the way from people making a decision. And unfortunately, many salespeople allow the sales process to kind of go on and on and on. And there's a real cost to that eventually. Right? Eventually you get the business, but there's a cost to that in follow through. If we can help people make a good decision and help them rationalize it and get it done sooner, we're helping them make it, a really good move, because they're off the market now. They don't have to worry about that process, and they're done. So in handling the objection, make sure before you ever try to answer it, which is the natural thing you want to do, is just answer it, is listen. Listen to what they're saying, give them a chance to fully explain it, and ask questions about it. Feed it back to them, give them, so why is that important, or why do you feel that way, or how much too much do you feel it costs? And by getting that information, now you can really get them to articulate what it is that they're really objecting to, and then logically you have a much better chance of overcoming it.
Ron, let's talk about prospecting now. I know that you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket and not look for new clients. So where should salespeople be looking for the best clients?
It's the lifeblood of business, isn't it, prospecting? And there's really two types of sources of leads. There's referred leads. These are people that either come back or are referred from a client you do business with. And then there's the non-referred stuff. And obviously, referred leads close about 80% more often than a non-referred lead. So any salesman, anybody in sales that's really serious about their career is going to be working and focusing on the idea of creating referred business. So from the day they start, they need to be thinking about, how am I going to build a long-term referral business? Because that's when it's fun. So the first thing they have to do is get really good at referrals. And, of course, we all know you have to ask, but you have to ask in a way that isolates faces. Too many salespeople say, well, who do you know that might need advertising specialties? And what they've done is they've accessed the brain like a computer, right? If I want to go on a computer and I want to find a file, if I know the directory of that file, I'm far more likely to get there as opposed to just the name of the file. The brain works that way. So we never ask again, who do you know? You say, who do you work with, or who do you go to church with, or who in your family? And you start breaking down into these directories in the mind. And you've got to ask until. So getting referrals is probably the most important place. The second thing is to really consider, the template of an ideal prospect in the business that you want to run. Like, in other words, is there a particular type of business that they're looking for? I find, one of the great prospective businesses out there are sales organizations that are looking for unique access. In other words, they're looking to get through. For example, pharmaceutical salespeople that go to see doctors, they have one of the tougher jobs in the world, really, is to get access to the physician who is the ultimate decision maker. And one of the things that they've done, and those listening have probably would agree to this, is that they've done a good job of getting certain things that get top of mind of their medication, their recommended prescription, in front of the doctor. So any organization that has had that same problem is a great template, to go after, because it's a way that advertising specialties can get through the door where you can't, and they can open the door for you. So I would think that would be a great thing. Another good thing is to think about the people who call on the businesses that you want to call on but don't compete with you, and forming relationships with them, developing a local area network, I would say, or a personal area network. We all know about computer networks, but a personal area network where you have people who can introduce you to the people who you want to be talking to, and you do the same, right? You exchange leads. So I think it's a numbers game at the end of the day. What you lack in skills, you make up in numbers. If you've got a lousy presentation, but you do it enough times, eventually you're going to find somebody. But if you really want to build long-term business, it's got to be around the area of referrals.
Ron, how about social media? Is that a venue that salespeople can be using for prospecting, or is that just a sort of client relations tool for salespeople today?
Interesting question, and I would say it's a venue for people to expand their sales. However, it can be a time waster too, and it really depends. And what I'm finding with younger salespeople is they feel like if they spend 3 hours on Facebook or LinkedIn, that they call that prospecting, and that's not really prospecting. True prospecting would be making productive phone calls, reaching out with productive face-to-face meetings, looking for introductions. I think the social media is a great support tool, and many companies, one client company I work with in Australia, they've been able to move their incidence of getting leads from social media, Facebook specifically, to about 8% of their total intake, off from about only less than 1% a couple of years ago. And what they do is they use the social media not so much to generate new business initially, but to highlight or showcase their satisfied customers. So, in other words, one of the goals you'd want to do is get your happy clients, once they've had results from your recommendation and they're happy with the product, you'd want to get them posting and showing pictures, utilizing the product. Maybe it's a trade show where they're seeing the advertising specialty being handed out and people wanting to grab it and take it. And so they put that on the social media. What that does is it generates opportunity and generates leads. But to sit there and think you're going to prospect initially on social media is probably not a realistic expectation. But I got to tell you, I've been fortunate to sell in both environments, in the social media element and outside of it. And I think it's an amazing opportunity right now to expand and to get top of mind awareness. And it's fast outpacing a lot of other mediums of advertising. And so I think it's perfect for advertising specialties because it's a very tactile thing. You can show pictures, people can touch and feel. So I think that's going to be a good thing.
Ron, what do you think salespeople can do to make sure they're not playing the low price game that many clients are demanding?
Yeah, that's tough, isn't it?
Yeah.
There is, especially, one of the things you do is, and it goes back to the original conversations that we had, and that has to do with challenging their conventional wisdom. The unfortunate thing is the low price demand stuff is usually, it comes from the purchasing departments who are just fulfilling an order from marketing. So the larger companies, marketing says, well, we need something to hand at the next convention or trade show. So they ask the production manager to go out and source some pens or go out and source some, USB drives or something like that, right? So they go out, and one of the popular items now is the power banks, the separate things that you can use to charge your mobile phone throughout the day or your headset. So they go out and they say, well, just go out and get us some power banks or go out and get us some USB sticks. And then the purchasing department goes out and they make the decision as a commodity. They figure they're all the same. They're all made in the same place, and, let's just get the best price. The way the salesperson has to make sure they're not in that environment is they need to work hard at developing that higher level of relationship. And so what they need to be doing is they need to be talking about and talking to the marketing people ahead of time. And so they need to get it before somebody says, oh, geez, we got this trade show coming up. We need some handouts. We need some swag. You got to get onto it earlier and be talking to clients about their calendars well in front, and then ask and determine and develop what it is that they want to accomplish, and then suggest products that would be unique and cutting edge and different. It seems like everybody's doing USB sticks and power banks now, but there was a time where a power bank would have been like the cutting edge, coolest thing at the conference, and everybody wanted one. So it would have gotten a lot of support and a lot of buzz. So I think the minute you get kind of relegated to the purchasing departments, you're kind of stuck there because they're not going to see the value add. They've got a job to do, and that is to get this done for the cheapest amount of money. It's going to have to be from talking to the CMO and the vice presidents of sales and the folks that are in charge of marketing, and create that value prop. Yep.
Ron, you talked earlier about the importance of really knowing your client's business and being a specialist and, knowing the market that they operate in as well as your industry as well. How about competitors? How important is it today for sales reps to fully know what their competitors are doing?
Well, uber critical, right? I mean, it's something that you have to be aware of what's happening in your market because, number one, you can get some great ideas. Number two is you want to find out, what they're suggesting and what other quotes might be. I would say that, as one is going out and looking at their business, One of the things that works really well is to figure out a few vertical markets that you do well in. So whether it's medical device or pharmaceutical sales, or maybe it's real estate, or maybe it's technical, something. So you decide which markets you're going to go into, and then figure out who is selling against you in those markets. Who are the other people that people go to? Of course, know their catalog, know what kind of products they offer, know what their limitations are. What areas have they not developed into? What areas does your competition not have a manufacturer's agreement with? So, maybe you can find products that can fit in that gap or in that niche. You probably find too that there's a lot of people out there who are, they're selling unique products, but they don't carry the wide lines. Like, they can't carry everything. So that's another way you can oftentimes displace a competitor. It's funny. A lot of one of the biggest objections, and you talked about this earlier, is when somebody talks to a potential client and they say, "Well, listen, yeah, we'll appreciate that. We're happy. We use so and so, and we're happy with them." So they're using one of your competitors, and so we'll keep your card if we ever have a need. One of the great questions to ask is what we use, what we call the history review close. I learned this from a trainer mentor named Tom Hopkins years ago. But the idea is you ask them, okay, so how long have you been using that company? Who'd you use before that? When you went from the previous company to the new company, did you do a lot of research? Did you get benefit? If you got so much benefit from making the change before, why would you deny yourself the chance to see what might be available by taking a look at what we have? By the way, have you seen the latest? And so what ends up happening is many salespeople, when they hear I'm happy with my current provider, they try to move to a quote, right? They say, okay, well, next time you place an order for pens, why don't you give me a chance and give me a quote, give me a shot? And what they're really missing out on is the opportunity to engage in a conversation. You shouldn't be looking to close a quote or a sale. You should be looking to start a relationship, and that history review idea can get that dialogue going. I've always thought it's an interesting question. Have you ever wondered what your loyalty to that company might be costing you? Meaning that that staying with the same company over and over again could have negative effects on keeping pencils sharp. But it's an important thing to know. What are they doing? What are they selling? What are they not selling? Is probably just as important to know, so that you can go out and seek the kind of products that might fit in that gap.
All right, Ron, we're gonna build the perfect salesperson. The best salesperson you ever saw. What traits did this person have, and what made them great?
A lot of times people think that people were born as professional salespeople, and there's been a lot of debate over the years: genetic, nature, nurture. And we believe, and of course, I'm in the training business, so if I believe that salespeople were genetically predisposed, then we wouldn't have an industry. The other thing is that we wouldn't go through sales interviews, things like that. You'd do a cheek swab and a DNA test, and you'd figure out whether or not that person was good in sales. The best salespeople I find are the ones that care most about the customer, and they believe the importance of helping somebody make a decision is in their best interest, not the salesman's. In other words, it's in the customer's best interest. And we believe that strongly in everything we've done and the companies we consult with, because if you think about it, for example, advertising specialties, as a professional in that industry, I help people every day make good decisions, and a prospect might do it once or twice a year. So I'm doing it every day. Who should theoretically be more capable and competent? And the answer is, me as that expert. So I believe I want to help them make a good decision, because if I leave them to the market, they'll probably make the decision based on the lowest common denominator, which is price. So the best salespeople have that ability to understand that it's what's best for the customer, and even if they don't sell it, they help them source it. I talked with a potential client yesterday in my business, and he was kind of around the area of what we do, but it was clear that he really needed something from somebody else, and so I was able to outsource another company to help him. I lost the business. Somebody else will do it, but in the long run, I did the best thing for the customer, and I think that's one of the best things. The second thing I've noticed is that they are absolutely fearless. They're not afraid to talk to people. They're not afraid to pick up the phone. They don't have a lot of call reluctance. They are just willing to go out and talk to people because they're passionate about what they're doing, and so they're willing to do that. The other thing that you find is that they are just really good listeners, and that is almost counterintuitive to what you think about salespeople. You think they're talkers and they like to go out and talk all the time, but the best ones ask really good questions, and they understand that the primary motivators for someone to get and invest money and to do something different than they've done is the avoidance of pain. There's two primary motivators. There's get rid of pain or get more comfort or get more pleasure. And most people will be far more motivated to spend money to get rid of pain. And if you ever question that, you just have to, how much money is spent every year in the United States on pain relief medication versus vitamin supplements. And you'd know without a doubt that people are far more motivated to get rid of pain. So the best salespeople know how to uncover it without making people feel uncomfortable, but uncomfortable in a constructive way. Like they're not shaming people or making people feel less than, but they stir up that level of discomfort enough that people see that and can make that decision. So then they assumptively show them how they're going to solve it. And I think that's a really good trait of a professional. Last thing that I've seen is they're very highly committed. Commitment, I've found, is a measure of pain that you'll handle before you quit. So how many times would somebody struggle and get rejected before they say, I don't need this anymore, I'm out of here, I quit. And it could be a job, it could be a relationship, it could be anything. But the best salespeople have that tolerance, and they get it because they're really goal-oriented. They understand what their goals are and what they're trying to create, and that's what I find the best salespeople do.
Very good. Well, Ron, thank you very much for joining us today, and thanks for your advice and your insights. It's been great. Good. Well, I look forward to meeting everybody at the conferences coming up in Orlando, Dallas, and Chicago. We've got some great things planned, and I appreciate the opportunity here this morning to go on the interview and share a little bit. I love salespeople and love helping salespeople, so all the best. Very good. Well, thanks for joining us again, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, Andy. Have a great day.
See you, Ron.
All right, you can check out Ron Marks at the ASI shows next year, all in Orlando and Dallas and Chicago. Joe, you'll be at those events now, won't you?
I will. So will you check out Ron Marks? I will be popping in, absolutely.
Very good. All right, Joe, well, unfortunately, we are out of time for the show today, but thank you for joining me.
Well, thanks for having me, Andy.
And we thank Ron Marks for joining us as our guest, and thank you for listening. Have a great week, everybody.